The Jews claim that they are the children of God. They say that God chose only them. In their sacred scriptures, it is written, "Who is like you, a people saved by the Lord?" They interpret this as meaning that no other people in the world are equal to them. In other words, they believe that their people alone are superior. I believe this idea is absurd. Every people in the world has its own unique strengths and achievements. In this video, we are going to explore some of them. No people are superior simply because of their birth. So let's take a look at 10 peoples who have made remarkable contributions to the progress of human civilization. Let's start by talking about the Armenians. What is the greatest strength of the Armenian people? More than anything else, it's their determination to preserve their language, alphabet, and cultural identity despite centuries of hardship. Throughout history, many small peoples were eventually absorbed into larger empires. Some lost their languages, others lost their writing systems, and some gradually lost their cultural identity altogether. The Armenians were different. Around 1600 years ago, the scholar Mesrop Mashtots created a unique alphabet specifically for the Armenian language. This wasn't just the creation of a new writing system. It became one of the most important reasons why the Armenian people were able to preserve their identity for generations. Once the alphabet was introduced, thousands of books were written in Armenian. History, literature, philosophy, science, and religious texts were all recorded in their own language. Their knowledge was no longer dependent on foreign languages. It became something they could pass directly to future generations. But the Armenian people did not have an easy history. For centuries, they lived under the rule of different empires. Wars, invasions, and political upheavals forced many Armenians to leave their homeland and settle in different parts of the world. For many communities, experiences like these eventually lead to the loss of language and culture. The Armenians refused to let that happen. Wherever they settled, they built schools, taught their children the Armenian language, preserved their alphabet, copied and protected ancient manuscripts, and continued passing their traditions from one generation to the next. That is why even today, Armenian communities can be found across the world, yet they remain connected by a shared language, alphabet, history, and cultural heritage. The greatest strength of a people is not measured only by their population or their economic power. It is also measured by their ability to protect who they are through generations of change. The Armenian people have shown the world that even after centuries of challenges, a nation can preserve its identity without losing its language, its writing system, or its cultural heritage. That is why, whenever historians talk about peoples who successfully preserved their language and identity across many centuries, the Armenians are always remembered with great respect. Now, let's talk about the Koreans. What is one of the greatest achievements of the Korean people? Without a doubt, it is the creation of Hangul, one of the world's most logical and easy-to-learn writing systems. Today, reading and writing may seem like ordinary skills. But centuries ago, literacy was a privilege that many ordinary people simply didn't have. In many parts of the world, writing systems were so complex that learning to read and write took years of study. The Korean people wanted to change that. In the 15th century, King Sejong the Great brought together a group of scholars to create a new writing system that ordinary people could easily learn. Their goal was simple. Reading and writing should not be limited to scholars and the elite. Every person should have the opportunity to become literate. That vision led to the creation of Hangul. What makes Hangul especially remarkable is its scientific design. Many linguists have pointed out that several of its letters were designed to reflect the shape of the tongue, lips, and throat when producing different sounds. Because of this, Hangul is often described as one of the most scientifically designed writing systems in the world. After Hangul was introduced, more books were written in Korean, literacy gradually spread, and ordinary people gained greater access to education. The Korean language became an even stronger foundation for preserving the nation's culture and identity. Today, South Korea has one of the highest literacy rates in the world. While there are many reasons for this success, having a simple, efficient, and accessible writing system has certainly played an important role. Another quality that stands out about the Korean people is the pride they take in their own language. Even in today's globalized world, they have continued to protect and promote their language, literature, music, and cultural traditions while also becoming leaders in technology, innovation, and modern industry. As a result, the Korean language is now being learned by millions of people around the world. The Korean people's greatest achievement was not simply creating a new alphabet. It was creating a writing system with the belief that knowledge should be accessible to everyone, not just a privileged few. That is why, whenever people talk about writing systems that transformed education and helped preserve a nation's identity, Hangul and the Korean people are always recognized with admiration. Now, let's talk about the Turks. What is one of the greatest strengths of the Turkish people? More than anything else, it was their remarkable ability to build and sustain one of history's longest-lasting empires. History is full of empires that rose quickly and disappeared just as fast, but the Ottoman Empire, founded by the Turks, lasted for more than 600 years. That kind of longevity is an extraordinary achievement. Winning battles alone cannot keep an empire alive for centuries. To govern such a vast territory, a state needs an effective administration, a reliable tax system, strong laws, secure trade routes, and the ability to maintain order across distant regions. The Turks proved they could do exactly that. At its height, the Ottoman Empire stretched across Asia, Europe, and Africa. Its people spoke different languages, followed different traditions, and belonged to different cultures. Yet the empire remained united for generations through a well-organized system of government. Another remarkable achievement was the capture of Constantinople in 1453. After becoming the Ottoman capital, the city known today as Istanbul grew into one of the world's greatest centers of trade, culture, and learning. Merchants traveling between East and West passed through this city, making it one of the most important crossroads of international commerce. Along with goods, ideas, technologies, and cultures also moved through its markets and ports. The Turkish people also left a lasting mark on architecture. Magnificent mosques, palaces, bridges, public markets, and other buildings combined beauty with impressive engineering. Even today, millions of visitors travel to Turkey to admire these architectural masterpieces. Their influence can also be seen in art, traditional crafts, carpet weaving, ceramics, music, and cuisine, many of which continue to be admired around the world. But perhaps the greatest achievement of the Turkish people was not simply building beautiful cities or winning wars. It was their ability to govern a vast, multicultural empire for centuries while keeping it politically stable and economically connected. Building an empire is difficult. Keeping it together for hundreds of years is even more difficult. That is why, whenever historians discuss long-lasting states, effective administration, and political stability, the Turkish people are recognized as one of history's outstanding examples. Now let's talk about the Mongols. What was the greatest strength of the Mongol people? More than anything else, it was their extraordinary horsemanship and the unmatched mobility that came from a life centered around horses. Today, knowing how to drive a car is an ordinary skill. But 1,000 years ago, for the Mongols, a horse was much more than a means of transportation. It was a way of life. From a very young age, children learned how to ride. As they grew older, they mastered riding at high speed, shooting arrows from horseback, throwing spears, and traveling for days across vast grasslands without losing momentum. This gave them an incredible advantage. While many armies could only cover a limited distance in a day, Mongol cavalry could often travel much farther in the same amount of time. Their speed allowed them to surprise their enemies, change direction quickly, and launch attacks where they were least expected. Another important strength was discipline. Even in the middle of a massive battlefield, every warrior knew exactly where to be and what to do. Orders were carried out with remarkable precision, allowing Mongol forces to attack, retreat, regroup, and strike again with incredible efficiency. Life on the Mongolian steppe was never easy. The climate was harsh, with freezing winters, hot summers, and long distances between settlements. Growing up in these conditions made the Mongols physically tough, mentally resilient, and highly adaptable. These qualities helped Genghis Khan unite the Mongol tribes and build what became the largest contiguous land empire in human history. But the Mongols' importance goes beyond military success. As their empire expanded across Asia and into Europe, they secured major trade routes, allowing merchants to travel more safely over long distances. This encouraged the movement of not only goods, but also knowledge, technology, ideas, and culture. Innovations such as paper-making techniques, printing, gunpowder, and other forms of knowledge spread more rapidly between East and West during this period. For this reason, many historians see the Mongol Empire as an important bridge that connected distant civilizations. The greatest achievement of the Mongol people was not simply the vast amount of land they conquered. It was proving that discipline, adaptability, speed, and careful organization could change the course of world history. That is why, whenever historians discuss mobility, cavalry warfare, and one of history's most influential empires, the Mongols are always remembered as one of the most remarkable peoples of the ancient world. Now let's talk about the Japanese. What is one of the greatest strengths of the Japanese people? More than anything else, it is their culture of discipline and continuous self-improvement. Every nation faces difficult moments in its history, and Japan is no exception. During the Second World War, many of its cities were devastated. At that time, many people believed Japan would never fully recover. But the Japanese people refused to give up. Instead of dwelling on what they had lost, they focused on rebuilding their country. They believed that every individual had a responsibility to do their work with care, honesty, and excellence. Over time, this mindset became a defining part of Japanese society. One idea that perfectly represents this way of thinking is Kaizen, which means continuous improvement. The idea is simple. No matter how good something is today, it can always be made a little better tomorrow. Even small improvements, repeated every day, can lead to extraordinary results over time. This philosophy is not limited to factories or businesses. It can be seen in schools, workplaces, and everyday life throughout Japan. Children are taught from an early age to take responsibility for their surroundings. In many schools, students clean their own classrooms instead of relying on cleaning staff. The goal is not simply to keep the school clean, it is to teach responsibility, respect, teamwork, and humility. This same attitude has helped Japan earn a worldwide reputation for quality. Whether it is automobiles, cameras, electronics, robotics, or precision engineering, Japanese manufacturers have become known for their attention to detail. Rather than asking, how can we finish this quickly, they often ask, how can we make this even better? That commitment to constant improvement has helped Japan become one of the world's leading nations in technology, manufacturing, and innovation. But perhaps the greatest achievement of the Japanese people is not technology itself. It is their ability to remain disciplined, work together, learn from failure, and keep improving even after facing enormous challenges. The Japanese people have shown the world that a nation's success is not determined only by its natural resources or its size. It is also shaped by the character of its people, their discipline, their sense of responsibility, and their determination to become better with every generation. That is why whenever people talk about resilience, quality, and continuous improvement, Japan is recognized as one of the world's finest examples. Now let's talk about the Arabs. What is one of the greatest contributions of the Arab people? More than anything else, it was their role in preserving, expanding, and sharing knowledge across civilizations. There was a time when knowledge developed in one part of the world rarely reached another. Different languages, long distances, and limited communication made the exchange of ideas extremely difficult. The Arab world helped change that. Because the Arabian Peninsula sits at the crossroads of Asia, Africa, and Europe, it became a meeting place for merchants, travelers, scholars, and scientists from many different civilizations. But the Arabs did much more than trade goods. They also exchanged knowledge. Works written by Greek philosophers, Persian scholars, and Indian mathematicians and astronomers were translated into Arabic. But they didn't stop at translation. Arab scholars studied these ideas, improved them, tested them, and made important discoveries of their own. One of the greatest centers of learning during this period was the House of Wisdom in Baghdad. Scholars from different cultures gathered there to study mathematics, astronomy, medicine, engineering, geography, and philosophy. It became a place where knowledge from many civilizations was brought together, preserved, and expanded. The Arab world also made major contributions to mathematics. The development of algebra was one of its most influential achievements. Arab mathematicians introduced new methods that later became essential to science, engineering, economics, and modern technology. Their contributions to astronomy helped improve star charts and methods of navigation. In medicine, Arab physicians wrote detailed medical books, established hospitals, and advanced the study of surgery and pharmacology. Many of these works remain standard references in Europe for centuries. The Arabs were also remarkable sailors and merchants. They traveled across the Arabian Sea, the Indian Ocean, and the Red Sea, connecting regions such as India, East Africa, and Southeast Asia through trade. As goods moved from one region to another, so did languages, technologies, scientific ideas, and cultural traditions. Even today, many scientific and mathematical terms used around the world have Arabic origins, reflecting the enormous influence Arabic once had as one of the world's leading languages of science and scholarship. The greatest achievement of the Arab people was not simply building successful trade networks. It was preserving humanity's knowledge, adding to it, and passing it on to future generations. Without that bridge of knowledge, the history of science and civilization might have taken a very different path. That is why, whenever historians discuss the preservation and transmission of knowledge, the Arab people are recognized as one of the most important contributors in human history. Now let's talk about the Persians. What is one of the greatest strengths of the Persian people? More than anything else, it was their extraordinary ability to govern one of the largest empires of the ancient world. Ruling a single city is difficult. Ruling a vast empire that stretches across thousands of kilometers is an entirely different challenge. The Persian people accomplished exactly that. At its height, the Achaemenid Empire stretched across 3 continents and became one of the largest empires the world had ever seen. It was home to people who spoke different languages, followed different customs, and belonged to many different cultures. Keeping such a diverse empire united required far more than military strength. The Persians developed an advanced administrative system. Instead of trying to govern every region directly from the capital, they divided the empire into provinces known as satrapies. Each province had its own governor, but those governors were also supervised by royal officials to help prevent corruption and abuse of power. This system allowed the empire to remain organized while still giving local regions a degree of autonomy. Another remarkable achievement was the construction of the Royal Road, one of the most important highways of the ancient world. Stretching for more than 25 kilometers, it connected distant parts of the empire and made communication much faster than before. Relay stations were built along the route, allowing royal messengers to change horses and continue their journey without unnecessary delays. Messages that once took months to travel could now reach the capital in a fraction of the time. Many historians consider this one of the earliest well-organized communication and postal systems in history. The Persians also showed remarkable tolerance toward the peoples they governed. Instead of forcing everyone to adopt the same language, culture, or traditions, they often allowed local communities to preserve their own customs while remaining part of the empire. This approach helped maintain stability across a vast and diverse territory. Another impressive innovation was the Qanat, an underground water system that carried water across long distances in dry regions. This engineering achievement made farming possible in areas where water was scarce and influenced irrigation systems for centuries. The Persian people's greatest achievement was not simply building a powerful empire. It was proving that a large and diverse civilization could be governed through organization, planning, communication, and respect for local traditions. That is why, whenever historians discuss great systems of administration and effective government, the Persians are remembered as one of history's finest examples. Now let's talk about the Egyptians. What is one of the greatest achievements of the Egyptian people? More than anything else, it is their extraordinary mastery of architecture and engineering. Today, we are impressed by modern skyscrapers. But more than 45 years ago, the ancient Egyptians built monuments that still leave the world in awe. The most famous of them is the Great Pyramid of Giza. When it was completed, it stood at about 146 meters, 481 feet, tall and remained the tallest human-made structure on Earth for nearly 4,000 years. That alone makes it one of the greatest engineering achievements in history. What makes it even more remarkable is how it was built. Each stone block used in the pyramid weighs several tons. Some weigh well over 15 or even 20 tons. Yet the Egyptians managed to quarry these massive stones, transport them over long distances, and place them with astonishing precision. And remember, this was thousands of years before cranes, electricity, engines, or computers existed. Even today, engineers continue to study how the pyramids were constructed because the level of precision is so extraordinary. The pyramids are not simply huge piles of stone. They were carefully aligned with the four cardinal directions: north, south, east, and west. Many researchers believe the Egyptians used careful observations of the sun and the stars to achieve this remarkable accuracy. But the Egyptians built far more than pyramids. They constructed magnificent temples, towering columns, monumental statues, palaces, and large public works that demonstrated both artistic creativity and advanced engineering. They also learned to understand the annual flooding of the Nile River, using it to support agriculture and sustain one of the world's earliest great civilizations. Perhaps the most amazing fact is that many of these structures are still standing after thousands of years. Every year, millions of people travel from around the world to Egypt to see these incredible monuments with their own eyes. The true greatness of the Egyptian people was not simply that they built massive structures. It was their ability to combine mathematics, engineering, careful planning, skilled craftsmanship, and the coordinated efforts of thousands of workers to accomplish projects that continue to inspire humanity. That is why, whenever people talk about the greatest achievements in architecture and engineering, the ancient Egyptians will always be among the first civilizations to be remembered. Now, let's talk about the Greeks. What is one of the greatest contributions of the Greek people? More than anything else, it is the way they transformed how human beings think. Today, if someone makes a claim, our natural reaction is often to ask, what is the evidence? Why is that true? Or how do we know? That may seem completely normal to us today, but more than 2,000 years ago, the ancient Greeks helped make this way of thinking a foundation of learning. Instead of accepting every idea simply because someone said it was true, they believed people should question, examine, and search for evidence. This approach changed the course of human history. Some of history's greatest thinkers, including Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle, came from ancient Greece, and their ideas continue to be studied in universities around the world. Socrates was famous for asking questions instead of giving answers. He believed that thoughtful questions could help people discover the truth for themselves rather than simply memorizing someone else's opinions. Plato expanded these ideas by exploring justice, education, government, and the nature of knowledge itself. Aristotle went even further. He carefully observed the natural world and wrote about biology, ethics, politics, logic, literature, and many other subjects. He believed that understanding the world required observation, careful reasoning, and logical thinking. The Greek contribution wasn't limited to philosophy. In mathematics, Euclid laid the foundations of geometry. His work became one of the most influential mathematics textbooks in history and remained a standard reference for nearly 2,000 years. In medicine, Hippocrates encouraged physicians to look for natural causes of disease instead of relying only on superstition. Even today, new doctors in many parts of the world take the Hippocratic Oath, which reflects the ethical principles associated with his legacy. Whether we look at science, mathematics, medicine, philosophy, politics, or education, one common idea appears again and again. Ask questions, look for evidence, think logically. These principles became the foundation of modern scientific thinking and continue to influence education and research across the world. The greatest achievement of the Greek people was not simply building powerful cities or winning battles. It was helping humanity develop a way of thinking that values reason, evidence, and the pursuit of knowledge. That is why, whenever people talk about philosophy, critical thinking, and the foundations of Western intellectual tradition, the Greeks are remembered as one of history's most influential civilizations. Finally, let's talk about the Chinese. What is one of the greatest strengths of the Chinese people? More than anything else, it is their ability to build and sustain one of the world's oldest continuous civilizations. Throughout history, many great civilizations rose to power, flourished for centuries, and eventually disappeared or were absorbed by others. Wars, invasions, and political changes caused many of them to lose their languages, traditions, or cultural identity. The Chinese were different. For thousands of years, they preserved their civilization while continuing to develop it. Dynasties rose and fell, but their language, culture, systems of government, and pursuit of knowledge continued across generations. That remarkable continuity is one of the defining achievements of Chinese civilization. The Chinese also gave the world some of history's most influential inventions. Among the most famous are paper, printing, the compass, and gunpowder, often called the four great inventions of ancient China. Each of these changed the course of human history. Before paper became widely available, people wrote on materials such as bamboo, silk, or animal skins. These were expensive, difficult to produce, and not easily accessible. The development of paper made writing far more practical, helping knowledge spread to many more people. Printing brought another revolution. Before printing, books had to be copied by hand, a process that could take months or even years. Printing made it possible to produce large numbers of books more efficiently, allowing education and knowledge to reach a much wider audience. The compass transformed navigation. For centuries, sailors relied mainly on the sun, the stars, and familiar coastlines to find their way. The compass made long-distance sea travel much more reliable, opening new opportunities for trade, exploration, and cultural exchange across the world. Gunpowder is another invention that had an enormous impact. Historians generally believe it was first developed in China. Over time, its use spread across continents, influencing warfare, mining, engineering, and even the development of fireworks. But the true strength of the Chinese people is not measured only by these remarkable inventions. Their greatest achievement lies in their ability to preserve knowledge, encourage innovation, and pass their cultural heritage from one generation to the next for thousands of years. They showed that a civilization can remain strong not only through military power, but also through education, organization, creativity, and a deep respect for learning. That is why, whenever historians discuss the world's oldest continuous civilizations, and the inventions that transformed human history, Chinese civilization is always recognized as one of humanity's greatest achievements. So what is the message I want to share through this video? It is this: racism destroys your ability to think clearly. Today, we may live in different countries and belong to different peoples, but there was a time when all of us shared one identity. We were simply human beings. So let us learn to respect other peoples. When we respect others, we are also respecting ourselves. Thank you.